Feel right now, Governor Weld, Governor Johnson.
Just bring up the gentleman here. I'm happy to do that.
Yeah,
Let's go.
yeah. Let's bring him up. How do you feel? What are you feeling right now, Governor Weld, Governor Johnson?
I couldn't feel any better. I don't think I've ever felt any more nervous in my whole life. Really, there was Everest and there was the Finn, and I thought it was collapsing, but this was maybe equal to that. Anyway, I'm so elated, and we get to move forward here. I think that with the two of us, I think we have a real shot at shaking politics up in this country.
Governor Weld, how do you feel?
Well, I feel full of hope and optimism for the fall campaign and what can lie behind it. But I remember when I said in there, I don't think that anyone else in the United States is advancing the mix of policy ideas that Gary Johnson and Bill Weld are. And that's total, erring on the side of freedom on social and personal issues. That's certainly not the Republican Party. And an emphasis on economic and fiscal responsibility, even conservatism. We were rated the two most fiscally conservative governors in the United States in the 1990s. And that's certainly not the Democratic Party today. So that's what I meant when I said we're going to have a lot to talk about in the fall. We will make it our business also to speak truth to power if we think power is straight down.
Governor Johnson, you've been speaking about this as a hypothetical all weekend about what this ticket would look like. Now that it's a real thing, can you talk about what this means for the Libertarian Party now in 2016?
Well, I think outside of this building, I think there are tens of millions of Americans right now that want to understand what libertarian is and means. And in my opinion, this is the best message team going forward to accomplish that.
Let me say one other thing. We do plan to run as a unified team. Those of you who have any familiarity with Massachusetts in the 90s will recall that the late, great Paul Cellucci and I ran as a unified team, me for governor and him for lieutenant governor. Then he became the governor right after me. And it was a totally unified administration. And the lieutenant governor didn't have separate staff. There was no issues hived off with the lieutenant governor. Just everything was done together. Gary and I have talked about this, and I think if we were successful, the best way to organize the White House would be for the vice president to have no staff. There would be no sniping of staff against each other in a totally unified approach. And it does help that Gary and I see the issues exactly the same way and have good personal chemistry and have known each other for 20 years.
Governor Weld, part of this campaign having sort of viability and resources to compete is money. Are you going to be embarking on a fundraising effort, and can you talk to us a little bit about what that will look like?
Oh, absolutely. I consider that one of my responsibilities here. And I want to have a web-based fundraising effort a la Bernie Sanders, Howard Dean. We do have an appeal to millennials, according to the information available to us. So that could be a productive line. I read that half the major Republican donors have not yet lined up to donate to Mr. Trump. And, I was Pete Wilson's national finance chairman when he ran for president in '95, and I was Mitt Romney's co-finance chair in New York in both 2008 and 2012. So I've met a certain number of the major Republican donors. Dems, not so much. But, there's some Democrats with libertarian sympathies as well. So I'm not going to let any stone go unturned there. And we'll do traditional fundraising in the states as well. But I want to make sure we have all three, major donors, web-based, and traditional party fundraising.
Have you been in touch with any fundraisers yet?
No. I thought it would be a little out of order until nominated, and I'm going to wait for the final meets to be called.
Governors, what does the next few weeks look like? Which states are you going to go to? What are you going to be focusing on aside from fundraising?
Well, I'm headed to New York for the next 3 days, and really, I'm headed to New York for the next 3 days, but really all this was incumbent on actually getting the nominations, and that now has happened, and I imagine it'll be a pretty full schedule, but never the whole notion of, look, not expecting things, hoping, but now it's actually reality. So I expect it'll be pretty darn full.
Governor, as if you're representing and introducing libertarianism to people, do you stand by all the parts of the libertarian platform, and, for example, abolishing the income tax, or are you going to present a slightly different tailored message of what libertarianism is?
Oh, I think I've said this all along. I think we're going to articulate the goal, if you will, and as pragmatists that will always sign on to anything that makes things better.
So that's not every part of the platform, then, the libertarian platform?
Well, you need to understand and articulate the goal, if you will, but also recognize reality and the fact that reaching that goal may not be accomplishable, and that would start with me and my recognition that, gee, that's just not going to be able to be accomplished tomorrow, but here's what might be able to be accomplished tomorrow. That's what I think we bring to this. We're not dogmatic on we're dogmatic on libertarian principles, but the degree to which you can accomplish those, well, getting from A to D is much better than just sticking at A.
Governor, I know it's early, but have you received messages of congratulations from either Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton?
I think Trump was tweeting all afternoon congratulations. That's what I heard.
Do you guys have any response to the insults he levied today, for example, calling Governor Weld an alcoholic?
Well, just maybe I'll have my first drink in 29 years, maybe.
But don't do that.
No, I'm not. And by the way, no alcoholic here. I quit drinking because of rock climbing. And I wasn't drinking in rock climbing, by the way. It was just the notion of being as good as I could be all the time.
Do you have any criminal justice reform proposals you're going to put forward when you're elected?
I think so. We're going to try and really address mandatory minimums. If elected, really addressing those nonviolent criminals that are in fact behind bars because of our drug laws, and that is, for the most part, that's the majority makeup of federal prisons today, are those that are there on mandatory sentencing, that have been convicted on numerous occasions for small amounts of drugs, selling those small amounts of drugs. There are tens of millions of Americans in this country outside of prison who are convicted felons that, but for our drug laws, would otherwise be tax-paying, law-abiding citizens.
I can give a gloss on that. I used to have a different emphasis on a number of these criminal justice issues when I was a prosecutor for seven years back in the 80s, although even then we emphasized the demand side of the narcotics use as well as the supply side. But I do think there's something happening in the country right now, kicked off by Republican governors in the South, which is a realization that we're not getting too far by treating narcotics problems, alcohol problems as addiction, as a status crime, as opposed to a national health care emergency. And if you study economics of the impact on the economy of narcotics and drug addiction, etc., it's enormous. And I think an increasing percentage of the population wants to treat those issues as public health issues as opposed to status crimes. That has an impact on the prison population, has an impact on the ability of people who've been involved with these minor drug offenses to get fully reintegrated into society and become more productive members of society.
Governor Johnson, this has been an interesting political event. I mean, we saw a gentleman on stage strip down to his underwear. We've seen sort of anime characters wander through here. You two are experienced politicians, but does the party have an image problem? Does some of the more freewheeling aspects of the convention show that the party has a ways to go to be taken seriously, or?
Well, I don't think freewheeling crazy, if you will, is unique to libertarians. I think Republicans have got them and Democrats have got them. And look, we're a family, and you know, it's the way it is. It's okay. It's okay. And for those of you, I'm sure, that have gone to the Democratic National Convention or the Republican National Convention, you can attest to what I've just said.
Will you be conducting a 50-state campaign, or are you going to focus on particular states where you have hope of getting an electoral vote or 2 or 3?
Well, it really depends on resources, but for the most part, the modern-day campaign is social media these days, and it's taking advantage of free media, and so the focus will be on free media. New York, the next 3 days, arguably, the two of us might be in front of 50 million people as opposed to getting out on the ground and reaching several thousand.
Governor, do you see any reason how the two of you are nominated that polling institutions exclude you from this point forward from the polls?
So, as journalists, how about a pitch? How about just an open headline questionnaire? Why shouldn't these two guys be included in the polls? I mean, really, isn't that's what I'd like the headline to be. Why not include these guys? What's there to fear? That they might get enough attention, that they'd actually be a part of the debate? Who should fear that? We're just a party of nuts, right? I'm kidding.
Now, you've talked about how you appeal to both Republicans and Democrats. Could you just speak to what it is that's going to draw a Republican disaffected with Donald Trump or a Democrat disaffected with Hillary Clinton to consider you two as candidates for president?
Well, you know, I don't think we're entering this with the mindset that we're against Donald Trump or against Hillary Clinton. I never joined the Never Trump movement in Massachusetts. I thought he did a lot of good for the Republican Party. You know, someone doesn't have to be disaffected with Mrs. Clinton to think that we have a good story. People have not heard our story yet. They don't have to be Never Trump to like our combination of having been the two most fiscally conservative governors in the United States, and we can prove it. You know, without bearing the baggage of the socially conservative movement, conservatism, social issues that are championed by the Republican Party in Washington, and championed pretty tightly. And the Republican Party that I knew, at least prior to 1994, there were a lot of people who held that mix of views. So they could like Donald Trump but still like us better.
Governors, do you see any authoritarian tendencies within Mr. Trump?
Yeah, I kind of do. I think that's a legitimate difference. But I would call him out on deporting 11 million illegal immigrants. I would call him out on building a fence across the border. I would call him out on the fact that he's calling Mexicans murderers and rapists when in fact they're really the cream of the crop. They're just people looking to advance themselves and their families and to work hard and you know, to achieve the American dream. It's just grossly misunderstood. Statistically, immigrants committing far less crime than U.S. citizens. And they're not taking jobs that U.S. citizens want. Well, thank you all.